Welcome to the cave. Kev here. This is a 1940 Indian chief project. It's been a long time project and it'll probably be a lot longer time project. But you know what? Like my dad said, it's not eating nothing. And I like having it here. Its name is Old Spring. Old Spring is going to be a bobber. No fender in front, probably a 5-inch tire. This aftermarket fender in back will be bobbed. It'll hold this old bus. It's like a bus tail light that has a stop in it. I took the lens out. And you can see a little box I'm starting to make a cardboard pattern for, like Spanky does, or Jason Smith channel, Vino Hot Rods, Outlaw Customs. Them guys are really good at that stuff. I'm not, but I will do it because that's one of my projects. It'll get done. It's a Kiwi seat. Excellent seat. Very happy with it. Kiwi Indian out of Riverside, California. 1940 was the first year for skirted fenders. One way to tell looking at an old Indian, if you see an old Indian, if it's got skirted fenders and it's old, it's a 1940 to 1953. But this, like I said, this will be a bobber. Bobber's a term from like around 1920, I believe, where they'd wreck their bike and cut the bad part off the fender. And it looked pretty cool, it looked pretty radical. That's a bobber. Old Spring is the brother of Old Green. This is Old Green. Old Green kind of started off like Old Spring did. That's a picture of my oldest daughter and youngest daughter on the frame of what I was using for a workbench and what I still use for a workbench. It's just changed a lot. That's when I first moved here. This is the workbench now. The bench you see in that picture. And it's got a lot of stuff going on it. Not a lot of stuff goes on, but it's got a lot of stuff on it. But anyway, we'll start right back here with this. What is this? Well, it keeps things out of there, and it also protects my shin. It's a spice container inside a Huggy with paper towel stuffed around it. It's worked for 25 years now, roughly. And if you ever hit your shin on this pipe, you will be doing something like that also. It does not feel good. Old Green originally had a 4-inch tire on back. It's got a 4.5-inch tire wide now. I never liked the transition between a military fender, which is extra wide, and a skinny tire. So I made a mud flap, put these little doodads on it, and I've been a member of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America for about 25 years, so I put that in the middle. This is a Lux Starburst taillight. On top here is an ammo box. And I wanted the ammo box to quickly get to tools and registration, billfold, whatever I don't feel like carrying. The ammo box used to have this thing for a lid, but I liked the graphics on it. So I made another lid for this box. The saddlebags I paid 15 bucks for, and they're actually a horse. They're made for a horse, like a trail horse. And of course, I made it. They were brand new leather, so I made them look like that. My wife made me a stencil, and I stenciled them with I believe it was shoe polish. They look old. I put these little conchos on them. Inside the bags, I put cereal containers. I cut them down a little bit, like for your breakfast cereal. and they keep the shape of the bag pretty good and keep things sort of waterproof. Another little quick piece of trivia about Indian was they were not called motorcycles at first. And here's proof of that. They were called motorcycles. And this is 1914. So Indians were not motorcycles. And they weren't even called Indian, they weren't even it was actually Hindi manufacturing that made Indian motorcycles. 1940 was the first year for rear shocks. I rebuilt these shocks. They're a little different than the ones you see right here. This is a 46 through 53, and it's got a little shelf for the top spring. But as far as I know, they all go in the same housing here. They just can't be safely interchanged. In other words, you can't have one 1940 and one 1946 setup. It's not very safe. Here's an old pay receipt from an employee, which I think is really super cool. Like I said, these bags were originally trail bags. And what I did is I cut the middle section, before this box was here, I cut the middle section out of the bags. I liquid stitched them together and bolted them to the top of the fender. This fender originally had like a small metal bracket on it, like for a fender, or not a fender, but a luggage carrier or something. But I bolted it all down, looked pretty neat. When I did the box, I end up fastening the bags with fender washers to the box, and I added the handles to it. Here's my battery setup I did. And I've always wanted to change certain things on it. Like I wanted to maybe make these black, round these off, make it look better, but I just never did do it. And I will someday, maybe. I wired the bike, so that was the first time I ever wired a motorcycle, and had a lot of help on that. This is a battery frog. It's aluminum. This is your generator. It holds down the frog. The vibration of the bike, you'll lose a frog. I've lost one or two of them before, which made me put this strap on it. But I made the strap big enough. It's all coiled up now, but I made it big enough where I can pull it out when I work on the battery. I made this wooden top here, custom wooden top for the battery. But Indian, I believe, originally had Willard batteries, like this over here, Willard. And they were tall batteries. This battery actually only goes about right here in this box. This box got a shelf in it. That's an aftermarket box that I made work with my battery. It makes a short battery into a tall battery. I thought I'd throw in here that this is what them straps look like. My dad probably had 2 5-gallon buckets full of these ground straps, and they are awesome. I've only got a few left. I've given a lot away over the years, and unfortunately I only have a couple left, and we had 2 5-gallon buckets full. I'm doing this video in segments, so I tend to repeat myself because I forget what I said in the other segment. But I'm not one to argue about what was right or wrong with a motorcycle. And I like all motorcycles, and I don't care if you want to paint your bike purple with pink polka dots. It's your bike, it's not mine. And just enjoy your bike. So I don't get hung up too much, and I don't argue at all about what this bike should have originally. I have 100% respect for anybody that can nut and bolt restore a motorcycle. This is not one of them. I made the bike the way I wanted it, including the color. Having said that, you get a lot of people that say it's OD green. Here's a picture of a 1941 Indian Chief, and that is OD matte colored green. That's Robin Markey's bike. He's out of Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. And my bike has a shine to it. It's a federal color. Here's a picture from World War II. Shows an Indian feather face horn. Many people will tell you it had a military horn on it. It did not. It's an Indian feather face horn. Many people will say that the bike should have had blackout lights. I don't see blackout lights on the fender in this motorcycle. But again, you know, everybody's got a different opinion on things. And when Indian went out of business in 1953, many of the people that worked there just aren't around anymore. So there's some pretty good accounts on what went on at the Wigwam or the Indian Motorcycle Factory. But I still see a lot of different opinions on things. So anyway, having said that, let's get back to the motorcycle seat. I put a spring underneath my seat, and that's a shock spring. And I believe that was the Indian, what they call the service shot, where they recommended to dealers, if you got a heavier rider, have them take a old spring and put it underneath the seat. And that works out really well for me. The carburetor, this is a Scout carburetor. And it's an M64. And the carburetors are out of Indianapolis, Indiana, by Linkert. One other thing I think is pretty cool about these bikes is the clutch. This clutch will go and stay where you leave it. It does not have a return spring. So you disengage it, engage it, it'll stay where you want. You can actually shift your bike and leave it in gear and then just kick it back when you want to take off. I don't do that, but it was a big selling point in 1939, 1940. I mean, just old days of a policeman could put his bike in gear and leave his bike ready to go. And then when he gets on it, kick it back. But anyway, that's kind of a neat piece of trivia. Like I was talking about earlier, when you push the clutch in to shift the bike and you want to leave the bike in gear while you get off the bike, which I would never do, but it was a selling point, this is the friction disc. I bought a couple of these off an old lawnmower shop. But the disc goes in there and it keeps friction against this foot clutch assembly. And you adjust how much tension you want back here. I would never leave my bike in gear, but you can do it if you want. So anyway, this is your throttle cable, and your Spark Advance is the same way. It's a super thick cable, and you bend it at 90, you get it into this block and tackle system. And I pulled my grip off. I put string under my grips when they start wearing down. And it keeps the grip kind of tight against the control sleeve. Just a thing I came up with, and it buys me a little bit more time on a set of grips that are wearing out. But I'll pull this off. Not that easy to get off, but I already had it set up. When you turn the throttle, it's a left-hand throttle. Indians were left-hand throttle till I believe around 1946. Some guys make them right-hand throttle. It's just whatever you want. I'm left-handed, I love it. I love left-hand throttle, right-hand tank shift. But when you turn the throttle towards you, this block and tackle assembly, that's what I call it, goes up and down. I'll show you here. That's what it looks like inside the control sleeve. And see how it travels? And you can barely make out that spiral there. It's traveling up and down a spiral. Let's see if we can get it in here a little closer. There it is, and there you can see the spiral. But anyway, it's a real booger to hook up. First one took me about an hour and a half. Second one took me about 15 minutes. That was 20 years ago. I called Jerry Greer and asked him about it. And he said it's like opening a can of worms. This, you got to have this thing dead on, or it will catch any burr on it. It will catch when it's doing its thing going up and down this spiral. Anyway, just thought I'd point that out. Another thing I think's worth mentioning is when you turn the throttle on this bike, you can see it move here on the carburetor. Anyway, wherever you turn it, that's where it stays. It does not return. In other words, you have cruise control on a bike that was made in 1939 just by the stiffness of this system and the wire. Wherever you set it, like Ronco said, set it and forget it. That's pretty cool. Working back up to the front of the bike, Indian feather face horn, spring pack, which you can see a lot of chips on it. I've had it in and out of there a lot, trying to figure it out. Spring pack goes down to spring connector links that go down into a rocker system, as you see here. You hit a bump, rocker system gets pushed up on this side, pulled down on this side, and it pulls down your spring pack. I've even seen some Indians that have a little rubber pad right here for like some serious radical action, but I never have got it quite right. I've got a 1939 wedge in here right now that Indian offered, and that has helped out tremendously. But I think the bottom line is, I think I just need to replace a spring pack in it. Here's a couple of them I got, and they're just so tight together and peened down, pressed down, whatever. I took my spring pack apart because it had a broken spring in it, and I thought I'd never get it back in there again. It's just amazing how they did it from the factory. Nice and lined up, but I took mine apart because it had a broken spring in it, and I will not do that again. If these don't have broken springs, they will never come apart. I've even seen on some older Indians that they have a leather sheath. It's like a leather case that's custom fit around here. Some guys make them. And they have an oil spot here, and you can pour oil in here, and the oil will keep this spring system oiled up. I've never tried one of them. I've also got fender supports that I made, and as I look at my work 20 years ago, I would have never let this go right now. I'm too picky now, but I made these out of gas pipe, black gas pipe. They were the closest thing I could find to what Indian had, which is this. It's a hollow pipe, but this is what was on the bike. And I don't know if you can really tell, but look at the size of that one, and look how skinny that one is. You know, it is what it is. You use what you had. But anyway, I made the gusset on them. And the cool thing about an old bike is nobody really knows. I mean, yeah, an Indian expert can see they're homemade, but 99.9% of the people would have no clue. But I would just don't look too close to the quality. I must have got tired of fiddling with it, but I would be a lot pickier making them nowadays. This is a handy Airlift 1000 SAM 2, which means it's a double drop down. This will drop down and the front will drop down. If you want to take off your rear wheel and drop this section down right here, you move your cycle vise from this set of holes to this set of holes, put your bike lift under the center or wherever you can. It's kind of tricky on old green. And your rear platform will drop down. I'll show you how the front drops down. Just like that. All right, back on the right side of old green, we'll start off with front brake lever. That's how that works. Most motorcycles have their throttle. On old green, your right hand grip controls your distributor. So Indian's rule of thumb was pull them both towards you for speed. You'll see 3 gas caps on top, or 3 caps I should say. Primary, secondary fuel, oil. Primary and secondary hold about 3.5 gallons. Oil holds 2.3 quarts. You have a hand shift. First, back to neutral. Kind of a false neutral, they call it. Then second, third. So that's your hand shift. Let me get out of my light here. This here's your brake pedal. You pull it. It pulls on this rod, which pulls on this bell crank, which also activates your rear brake light. This rod is threaded at both ends. It pulls on a brake arm, which turns a cam to apply the brake shoes against the brake drum. So it's a pretty long system here. Kind of a booger to get these adjusted just right, but you make adjustments at both ends of this threaded rod that I made. The generator is electric by Frank's. It's a 12-volt system. Old green is a kickstart. And here's the pedal that came off it. Talk about something that's had some good use put to it. Anyway, here's the system for starting it. And once you get her going, you can start this thing using your hand if you want. It works, and if it don't work, well, it might not be pretty. But no, it's nothing like you see these guys kicking these Harleys. I can get this thing to where, you can get it right in this little sweet spot and give her a swift little push down and she'll start by hand. It's just been a real sweetheart for 20-something years now. And we'll cover a lot more than that in my next video when I start her up for you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.